Welcome back to the Cat Dad Show. I'm your host, Scott Colby. Now, did you know that your cat may be therapeutic and helping you heal in ways you never imagined? Well, in this episode, we're joined by trauma and emotion healer, Jillie Maria, who shares how our unprocessed emotions shape our lives and how even our cats can be powerful partners in our healing journey. Jillie, welcome to the Cat Dad Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and I think this is such an interesting topic. I mean, just talking about trauma, right, is such a heavy and big topic. And then trying to bring cats into that and seeing where they could be a part of the journey, I think can be a fascinating discussion. So, just to kick things off, how are our cats therapeutic? How can they help us?
There's a variety of different ways. And, I want to start off by saying that animals in general, and specifically cats, are incredibly intuitive. And so, if you've ever noticed that you are having a hard day, or you're like you lose somebody and you're crying, or you are feeling under the weather, and you notice your cat is like, will not leave your side. Um, what two things that they're doing? Cats and dogs are natural empaths. So number one, they're trying to take your stuff and take it on. And they are also, and that's one of the things that I could talk about a little bit later, but clearing your animals is really important because they are natural empaths. They naturally take on your energy. Another thing that way that they function is cat purrs are, and I can't remember the decibel they are, but they're such a decibel that they actually have a healing frequency with your nervous system. So that's another way that they can help you. And another way that they can help you is if you have if you're a cat, or you're gonna know that there's some cats that are naturally like physically heavy, like they like physically feel like a weighted blanket on you, like a gravity blanket. And then you have some cats who are floppy and they're naturally like a rag doll, like you pick them up with one hand, you know, they flop around. And then there's some cats who are physically heavy. As an example, I have 5 cats, and one of them is just dense, and then I have 2 that are sort of floppy, and all of them are adult cats, and one of them in particular is very heavy. So, like, if he comes and physically lays on my body, I can feel my body shifting. I can feel my body, like him taking on my energy, number 1, but also being in the space of like he'll literally like lay down. Like he'll figure himself, and you notice it sometimes if you don't ever notice it with your cats. Like if you're laying down and you're in a space where your cat decides that you would be a fantastic chair, um, or a fantastic bed, that actually is your cat giving you therapy. It's actually your cat giving you, like, pressing into you and giving you um, that weight, and really putting you in a space of, like, "I'm gonna be safe with you and protect you." And I have noticed with my particular cat, Mateo, that does that, that he will be in a space where he needs to be, like, right here. Now, he can adapt and go other places, because like, if I lay on my side to take a nap, for example, I usually have that coveted space right by my chest, and then I have the space behind my legs, and then I have the space, in front of my legs, my shin air my shin area, and then I have my hip area. And so my cat's kind of depending upon if, like, we're taking a nap on a Sunday, I can have as many as 4 of my 5 cats take in their each individual spaces. But the reality is they also purr.
Mhm.
One of the things with cats is that when they're comfortable with you, they will purr. And if you're in a space where you are holding on to a cat and they are not purring, and I also work cat rescue, so I have a lot of experiences with all different cat personalities. And we have some cats who never purr. Like they are just not, that's not their space. They are like a one cat household type thing. And we definitely cannot have like we just don't have the space to have them be in one cat space. Um, but cat purring is therapeutic. And I love one thing that I love too is with the babies is that when you're, picking up kittens, and we have a trio of kittens right now that are at the rescue who are like purr on demand. And what I mean by that is like you pick them up and they're like purr, 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 purr.
It's like,
And some cats are also like very soft purrs, and like that you can feel it, but they're not like. And then you have some cats who like you can hear them purring in the next room. Like they have very loud motors.
yeah.
And that's just the way that cat is made, as opposed to like, oh, the cat purrs really loudly with you and not at all loud with me. Just how they're made. The thing is though, is when you're talking about mental health, a lot of times people feel like, they get animals specifically for like being an emotional support animal. And
Right.
the reality of the situation is that a cat can be, not that you're gonna take the cat to Walmart, take it on a plane, etc. But cats are really good at naturally being emotional support animals. And I will share with you that, for example, um, like my cats know when I'm not good. I mean, they calibrate pretty easily to their owners. And also, one of the things that I notice is that when I have clients and I get ready to get on Zoom calls, 9 times out of 10, I have a minimum of 1 cat that's at my feet pretty quickly or wants to be in my lap, because
Mm.
they like to receive the healing too. They like to receive it. And, cats don't like baths. They don't like showers. They don't generally like water except for drinking it. But, when I talked earlier about clearing your cat, I also use crystals in my work. And one of the things that I recommend is you can just say, you can put your hands on your cat. And this is if you're not woo woo, if you're like, what is she talking about? Where is she going with this? I'm not a woo person. I'm not into this. That's fine. Um, but I recommend for everybody, even if you're not woo woo and you're just like, this isn't my thing, cool. We all absorb energy. So if you ever notice, for example, that you go to like a Walmart or you go to like an airport or you're in a meeting or you're in you go to a music festival or something and you come home feeling like really heavy, you've absorbed all that energy. We naturally do that because everything is energy. So for the humans, I highly recommend washing your hands with intention. So washing your hands with intentionality, and I'm washing my hands in the situation, the day, the afternoon. You can also take a shower the same way. Now, again, like I said earlier, we're not putting our cats in the shower because cats don't. However, one of the things that you can do is you can either, with your hands, like brush them, and I'm clearing you of all the energy of the day and clearing you of all the energy of the day. My cats personally, I have selenite, which is a white, typically it's in like stick form crystal. And you can get it at metaphysical shop, crystal shop, rock shop, whatever you want to call it. Um, I calm my cats with it and they love it. Um, my oldest, biggest cat, Mookie, also has this bad habit of sitting on it. So like I'll start calming him and I'll start just like you would with a regular calm, right? And I'm doing my thing and I'm clearing his energy. And he at one point will put one hand and then I like both paws are over my paw, over my hand rather. And like I'll start trying to I'll slide it underneath him and now slowly pull my hand out. So he's now sitting on the selenite. And I'm like, okay, buddy, you can have the selenite because he loves the selenite. And so I let him use that to clear himself. And it automatically self clears. So those are just a couple different ways where our cats directly help us with mental health. And I feel like, and I want to just, as someone who works rescue, I need to say this. Pets are a responsibility. And a lot of times we get into space, like I am a cat mom and I'm also a rescue person. And a lot of times we get into spaces where people will be, we have a fee, a rehoming fee. And a lot of times people will balk at it. And what I want to just say is not about that, but about to say, it's important to keep our cats healthy. And when we're in a space where we got to take care of ourselves, it's really imperative that not just with our animals, but we've got to take care of ourselves. So, taking your cat to get spayed or neutered, taking your cat to get their annual rabies shot, keeping them updated on vaccines, etc. Things like that are just really important things that need to be done. Because the thing is when it's like you take care of you. When you take care of you, you can also take care of everyone else around you. When we put our oxygen mask on first, we can
Mm.
then help other people without becoming a liability. And I think we're in a society nowadays where we try to be selfless, and society has tried to make us like for the betterment of the community and blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, that's great, but if you're useless because you're sick, like we're getting into sicky season now, if you are down for the count because you are working yourself into like, and again, you're down for the count, you're on the sofa, you're like, and your cat's coming up to you and being like, "Mommy, Daddy, like, I want to help you. I'm going to cuddle with you and purr with you so that sit down." And a lot of times, when people will say, "I took a longer nap than I intended to," I'm like, well, your animal told you that you needed more sleep, more
Mm.
rest.
Mhm.
And I'm the first person, like, especially on a Sunday afternoon, to be like, put the kitties are where they are. And I got 2 or 3 kitties on me. It's like, yeah, I can't move because of this.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been there too.
this, this is cute.
Or
This is, it's life. You're like, this is cute. I can't move this.
yeah. Um, and I'm wondering, like, what role cats can play in grief, and just a little bit about kind of my history with cats. I had 2, that have passed away. One passed away 5 years ago, one passed away a year ago. Um, so the 2 that have passed away, I got them together, uh, and I feel like the one that passed away second helped me through my grieving process of the first one that passed away. Then once the second one passed away, I was alone, and that's when I felt like I really spiraled. Like, I didn't even wanna be home because it's too quiet, and so I actually stayed with a friend for, like, 3.5 months. I crashed on her sofa because I was scared of being home. Then eventually, slowly I started to process the grief, and then eventually I got 2 new cats, this year, but I feel like if I really think about it, they're helping me through that grief of my cat that passed away last year because I'm not over that, right? You're still takes a long time for many of
Mhm.
us to process through that grief. So I know we have a lot of listeners that have lost a pet, and I don't know if you have experience with how cats may play a role in helping somebody through the grieving process.
Oh, 100%. So one of the things that happened at the rescue that I work at is I personally have lost 7 or 8 cats in my life.
Mm.
Mhm. And so, um, yeah. So when I lost Maricela, Mookie was by himself. Mookie was by himself for about 6 months, and you can also tell because pets will look for the one that they're missing, and we
Mhm.
often feel like, oh, they're not really, cats don't process, they don't process the same way. No, they still do. They still recognize where that animal is not with them, and um, I feel like cats are really good at taking on grief, and they're also really good naturally at transmuting grief into love, into joy. And a lot of times we feel like when we're grieving, we can't also, during the grief process, feel joy, feel happiness. We have this really weird thing, a dichotomy about grief, especially. I don't want to speak to outside the United States, but in the United States, we have this very weird thing about grief in and of itself, and we have a weird thing about grief with animals because we feel like it should go a certain way, and there's timelines, these are weird artificial timelines that exist because, pro tip, most of us are really crappy at dealing with every fear-based emotion, and I include fear-based emotions: anger, sadness, guilt, grief, shame, melancholy, disappointment, frustration, all of it. We don't know as a collective, and many of us as individuals, how to cope with and process those emotions in a healthy manner. So rather than poke into that when we're grieving an animal, for example, we tend to be like, oh, I'm fine. And people around us, because they also haven't grieved their Fido or their Lucy or whatever, they're in the space oftentimes of like, well, it's been 10 minutes since they passed away. So you should, it's just a dog, cat. You should be okay. No,
Mm,
no, no, no. My experience in losing, I've done it both ways. I've done it where, and when I say both ways, I mean I've done it where I've gone to the vet and had them put down, and I have also uh, laid on the floor with animals, and done all those things that letting an animal pass away peacefully. So I've done it both ways, and I want to say that both ways suck.
mhm.
I have lost animals where I knew it was coming, and I've lost animals where it was a complete shock. And again, both ways suck. And watching it last two, it's 2024. So it's been about 2 years. We took in kittens and a cat from a trusted source at the rescue, and unbeknownst to us, um, they had Pan Luke. And if you are unfamiliar, Pan Luke is deadly, and it spreads like wildfire. And you will have you won't be able. It's not a thing that presents like like when you have like a URI, upper respiratory infection in a cat, where they're sniffly, or they're not eating because they can't smell, or they're like laying down, they're not super active. Those are signs normally in cats that you can say, okay, there's something wrong here. I need to go to that, and need to get the medication, so on and so forth. Panic is one of those things where 1 minute they're like literally like we've seen it happen, like where 1 minute animals playing, having a good time, they're meowing, they're doing all the things, they're eating, everything's crazy good. And within 15 minutes, they are like, and you're going, what in the world? Like they're lethargic and all the things.
Mm,
And in that case, we had the situation happen and we lost 21 cats total. No, 19 cats total to Pamela, cats
mm,
and kittens. And that's one of those things that I want to say is, and we were we had a lot of kittens and they were not old enough or heavy enough to be vaccinated. They have to be pound and a half minimum to get the FVRCP at vaccination. And that's my cautionary tale of please get your animals vaccinated. I don't care what you think about human vaccinations, blah, blah, blah. That's a whole separate podcast.
yeah.
But point of fact is that when you get a kitten, you are giving them the FVRCP vaccination. The first one when they hit 8 weeks or a pound and a half, whichever comes first. And then you give them two more after that, a month, like 3 to 4 weeks apart. And then you give them the last one for the year at about the year marker when they get spayed or neutered, whichever comes first. And then you just want to boost it annually. And that is what protects them from Pan-Luke. Pan-Luke is deadly, and losing kittens and cats to Pan-Luke sucks in a big way. And what we found with our grieving process, with myself and the owner of the rescue, was that yes, having other kittens and cats around to that were safe and that were not, protected, and obviously, um, they bring so much joy. I mean, part of it is yes, they will purr, they will snuggle up next to you, and they will purr and purr and purr and purr and purr until they're done, or until you get up because you gotta pee or do something else, whatever comes first. Um, and they're also just really great, snugglers. And again, that weight, because sometimes having that physical weight on your body is just like to ground you and get you in the space of like, this is gonna be okay. And also the other thing too is that, is one of the things that helped me, and it's really very practical, but it is the truth, is that one of the things that when we were having, we were going through tremendous loss at the rescue was, um, realizing that the cats that are alive need fed, watered, litter boxes changed, all the things, supplies organized, all the things that need to happen to make the rescue work and continue functioning had to be done, you know, just because, this animal passed away, we lost these kittens and cats, we still have animals that need to be loved on, that need to be taken care of. And that for me was a really important thing because I needed some time, and we do sometimes, even when we lose a human being, like, we lose someone in our life, sometimes having a task to go back and like laser focus on so that we're not, that pulls us out of the grief. Like, you've got to do laundry, you've got to go to the grocery store, you've got to pay the bills, you've got to do these things. Sometimes having that refocus is not a bad thing.
Mm.
And because a lot of times we feel like, again, we have stories in our head about, I'm not grieving this, I'm not, honoring them correctly if I don't like stay in grief and wear black for a whole year as a.
Right.
But the reality of it is that I tell people, as long as you are not numbing in a negative way, like spiraling into alcoholism as an example, or spiraling into space where you're spending thousands that you don't have on Amazon and you have all kinds of boxes showing up outside your door and you do what
Mhm.
you order.
Right.
We don't want to numb to the point where we're not functional.
Mhm.
But that is really the only thing where I'm like, yeah, as far as the grief process is, that's really the only space where I'll say slow your roll. Aside from that, like, there's nothing wrong with going back to work. There's nothing wrong with um taking care of business, taking care of yourself, taking care of your other animals. There's nothing, I tell people all the time, you're gonna know when it's time to move on. When my parents adopted two kittens from the rescue. And they were like, yeah, we're kind of thinking about, getting another kid because their cat they had for 14 years passed away. And they were without a cat for like 6 months and they were getting near retirement age. And they were like, and I said, well, I know
Mhm.
somebody.
Just working.
And so they were going to adopt one. And there were two that came and just sat on my mom and just purred and just made themselves at home. So when they were getting ready to leave town, they adopted two. And I had someone over the summer who came and she wanted to adopt one of our kittens, and it was one of the ones that she wanted to adopt was reserved. And I said, no, that's kitten's reserved. And probably a month ago now, maybe ish, um, that cat became unreserved. That kitten was unreserved, and so it was available. And she said, "Oh my god, is that the same kitten?" And I said, "It's the same kitten that you've been wanting." Well, at the time, her husband had lost her husband's cat, and he was like, "Nope, not ready for it." I said, "He's not." I said, "Tell me the story." And she told me the thing, and I said, she said, "Yeah, we lost his cat, put it down like 6 months ago." And I said, "Oh, okay, so your husband's not ready for another cat yet." When it's time to bring another fur baby into your house.
Yeah.
And there is no timeline. I mean, like, some people, like, they lose one on Monday and they get a new one on Tuesday.
Yeah.
People nee And some people need, like, they know they got stuff going on or whatever, and they take, like, it's been plenty of time. And so in this case, like, a month ago, she reached out and said, "Oh my god, is that the is it I wanna get this kitten and, kitten." And that kitten is now living its best life in her house, and she just, like, 3 days ago, adopted another kitten from us. So those 2 that had been together pretty much since they were born, although they're from 2 different litters, living their best lives. So, there's a lot of benefits for mental health around having cats and kittens, as far as, like, their cuddling, the purring, and even you're having to take care of them, which feels like a really weird thing sometimes, but sometimes knowing someone else is dependent upon us to get off our booty
Yeah.
can get us off our booty and, get us into the space of refocusing our energy. I mean, there was I'm in North Carolina and, obviously, Western North Carolina is completely devastated. I'm not in that area, but a lot of people lost everything. And, with Helene, and there was a situation 3, 4, maybe a week ago. It's been a week ago now. But anyway, one of the many pages that I follow with volunteering and doing all the things, um, they said the post was never give up hope. And these people had, long story short, their house had gotten washed away. They had gotten like water rising really fast. And they um had to escape. Like, they had to escape with like a minute notice. And they got out, their family's safe. But in the meantime, like they had two of their cats. One was in a kennel and the other one they couldn't kennel. So they were like, we're just going to have to, whatever. And they saw the cat go flying out of the house right before their house went down
Right.
the mountain into water.
Oh gosh.
And so they were like, we can't worry about the cat. It sucks, but we can't worry about the cat. We gotta go. So they had been a shelter and somebody had like, it's been like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, had posted and said, "Hey, we were doing something entirely unrelated and we hear this meowing and there's this cat like 30 feet up in a tree that is like gangly. It's obviously needs to eat. It's skin and bones. It's, tired, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like it wants to talk to the manager. Um, but this cat survived. And it's in this tree, and they're like, we got it wet food, and we got it wet food and water, got it down, and that cat just purring like crazy, et cetera. Does anybody know? Like, and the thing is, you can't say in this area because so many people's houses and towns went like 4 or 5 miles plus
Yeah.
downriver. So
Yeah. It's
you have
awful.
no idea. Like, it could be this cat could belong to anybody. And so people are sharing this cat everywhere. And, let's see if we can find. Well, this happened this week, reunion. And people were like, holy crap, oh my God, we assumed our cat was gone. We assumed that
Yeah.
she was gone. And someone posted and like, and someone said, see, does it have a collar? No collar. Snap collar was long gone. But they said, Steve, that looks like our kitten, da da da. And they privately messaged somebody and said, this is what, you know, details and whatnot. No, like it's your cat.
Wow.
And,
Okay.
one of those things that spend, all this
Miracle.
time. And it's crazy how, and they've had a couple dogs like that too, where they've been doing other things with rescue and trying to figure it out. And, they have found, they've just been doing other things. And obviously, it's like we never want to be in the space of like the pets don't matter because they obviously absolutely do. Um, but it's like if you're in an a lot of people were like literally escaping with their lives, and so they have definitely found animals and and every possible thing in rando places at this point. And um, but yeah, that's and a really important thing that I want to say is whatever task that our animal can carry for us, so to speak, is really important that we give ourselves that grace and allow that. So again, if you're in the space where and then the thing is too, is like, if I'm feeling stressed, if I'm feeling anxiety, my cats know me well enough that they will come on over and like, purr up against me. And suddenly I've got like all the cats. And I also know if my cats suddenly all get zoomies to check myself. Okay. Mom's got some energy going on somewhere because they all of a sudden it's NASCAR broke out of my house. And so I tend to be in the space of, they'll come over and they'll start purring against me. So I tend to be in the space of like petting. My cats will sit by my feet. They will also play floppy where like half their body is on me and half the body is, elsewhere. And, they like when I'm with clients, they like to be near me when I'm running energies. When I'm doing healing with clients, they like to be near it. And, cats are multifunctional healing tools. And sometimes that is as simple, again, as you petting them and them purring and, letting you calm down, helping you calm down.
Right.
To, cuddling with you, to being a weighted blanket on you, to the softness too. And I have not read up a ton on this yet. I just happened upon it a couple days ago about how the fur textures can help people that have sensitivities as far as like touch and feel.
Mm.
Like people that have stim issues can have different cat fur, like the softness can affect them. And I will say, like I said, I have 5, one of which is a domestic short hair Peterbald cross. And so he has very fine, like almost velvet fur. I have one that has very, very coarse fur. He's not a lot of, like when he'll get petted, but he doesn't like to be petted really. He likes to just be like, look at me. There's one in every bunch. There's one in every bunch. Um, my oldest honestly feels like fleece. And
No, it's not.
um, and my youngest one, again, it's like my second youngest one is my only girl, is just very soft. And so a lot of times that fur can be stimming for people. And a lot of people also can be in the space of, like, if you are in the space of, there's generally three different types of cat fur. So there is like domestic short hair, domestic medium hair, domestic long hair. Like a good example of a long haired kitty is a Maine Coon.
Right.
Mhm. Most cats, at least in my experience, um, and we've adopted well over 500 in the last couple of years, adopted out rather, is most are domestic short hair. People, for some reason, I think it's because they're so fluffy, um, but they're hard to maintain, is domestic medium and long hair cats. They like the longer, just the football thing.
Beautiful.
And, but a lot of times it's just that petting, a lot of times can be very calming for people that are like touched them. And I recommend, honestly, if you're in the space where, and one of the things that happens when we, post cats and kittens for adoption is a lot of people are like, "I'll see pictures." I'm like, really? I recommend highly to just come to the rescue, because
Mhm.
sitting with the kittens and seeing their energy, or the cats, and experiencing their energy and seeing what you want. Like, some people just want a cat that basically is, is this one guy said, "I want a cat statue." And, like, basically, like, well, like, he didn't really want a cat that was gonna be, like, up in his business, because there
Yeah.
are cats who have no concept of boundaries whatsoever, and it's like, rode through or fine, they're, like, right here all the time. And then there's some cat too, like, I've got 1 out of my 5 who basically, like, he is very happy to, like, when he wants to be up in my business, and usually when he wants food, um, he's, like, right here, and he's a stole. Um but most of the time, he's very happy to be sitting on the cat tree, or sitting on the back of the sofa, or sitting somewhere where you can just watch everything. And again, it's really advantageous to see what you want and see what personalities work for you. Like, if you're not wanting a zoomy cat, if you're like a high anxiety, high, like, always going person, you probably want a cat that balances you out, or a kitten that's going to
Mhm.
balance you. If you're the kind of person who you're super like C personality, you're like, yeah, I could just sit here all day, and just kind of person, you may want a cat that challenges you to play, or likes to have things thrown to them, or likes to play fetch. Um, and you can train a cat to do that, by the way. Um, and I mean, honestly, I cats are a lot of fun, and I mean, yes, they're a responsibility, but they're a lot of fun. And part of the thing too is it's like, I have this game that I play with myself at the rescue, and not more so than I do at my own house, but where I'll clean litter boxes, and I'm like, how long is it going to take when I finish cleaning that litter box before somebody has to mark it and make sure that it's, I always say they're going to test it. And nowadays,
Live
usually before
stuffing.
I clean,
Live stuffing.
usually before I'm even done, I'm like scooping one half, and they're like, oh, let me just, I'm like, there's 8 other litter boxes in this, which pop a squat in, and you need that one. Like,
Yeah.
oh, no.
I've been there.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, they're comical. It's like, they're so comical, and, it's, adventures in Catland with people, like, people that own, it's always fun when there's someone who's never owned a cat before, and, like, they'll message, like, I had someone message me and say, "Oh my god, my cat just made this really weird sound, like it was gonna throw up, but it didn't." I said, "Yeah, it's gacking." And they said, "Okay." And I said, "It's like human burping. Like you're trying to clear air, like you're trying to clear something." And they're like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "Yeah, they're fine. Like your cats are gonna have hairballs. They're gonna cough crap up. They're gonna eat too much of something, and or whatever. And it happens." I'm like, "Yeah, not much. You would be hard pressed to phase me nowadays."
Yeah. 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 You've got so much experience with cats, and you alluded to it a little bit ago, how of course, the cat owner, the humans, right? We need to take care of ourselves so that we can be there to take care of our pets as a responsibility. I do want to touch on the work that you're doing because you're doing such important work on around trauma and your emotion healer. What are some signs that you see in people that suggest that they have unprocessed emotions or trauma?
That is an excellent question. Things like if you get angry at things that are not worth getting angry about.
Mm.
For example, if you get pissy at the barista because she made your coffee wrong. If you get, and I always say to people, if you think you have an anger management issue, or if you get road rage in traffic, if you can drop into tears the drop of a hat, if you get upset about things that, if you look at it from a 2020 hindsight space, yeah, that really wasn't worth losing your mind about.
Mm.
Um, if you're in the space where, like, I always tell people, if your response to something is incongruent with the event, like, for example, if you are in a space where, um, and I'll give you an example from my days of being toxic. Um, I got upset about something that I was trying to make reservations at a hotel, and it was not booking correctly. Like, I booked it and it showed it booked it, and then it charged my credit card twice.
Here.
And I'm embarrassed to admit it, but it is what it is. Um, and like, lost my crap. Like, I was, screaming. I was screaming at first before I called them. I, like, had enough sense to burn off my initial, like,
You prefer.
and then, but I still was upset. I still was like, "Oh my god, I'm looking at my credit card statement and you charged me this much money and holy crap, and this needs to be refunded immediately." And of course, they have no control over how credit cards work except to process the refund and whatever. But it's like if we're in a space of um screaming at people who don't, and I say it as bleeding on people who didn't cut us. If you are, yelling at somebody or up in someone's face at anything, a grocery store, um, at you walking down the road and there's a protest going on and it doesn't have anything to do with you and you feel the need to, or they feel the need to, if you're the they and you're protesting and you feel the need to get in someone's personal space, might be time to find someone to process some healing with. Um, if you are saying things on social media, this is a really big one right now.
Yeah.
If you are saying things on social media that you would not say to somebody's face, if you are disassociating with it, if you are disassociating from yourself, like if you do a thing and you are like suddenly in the space of like, oh my God. Or an example of that is like, let's say that you have random sex with a stranger and you go to a club, you take someone home, and the next day you're like either totally wrapping yourself up in something else entirely, and like you're not going to talk about it. You're not, you are ashamed of it. Your friends ask you how your life is going, and your response is always fine. Those are all things that if you have road rage, if someone passes you on the road and you're going like 62 and 55 and they are flying past you at 70 and you suddenly feel the need to race them. Um, if you are screaming and yelling at technology, if you are screaming and yelling at your spouse, if you are picking fights with people, if you are gaslighting people, if you are in a space where you are constantly in tears, if you are wearing big glasses and saying, "I'm fine," and you clearly are not fine. No shame in your game, but again, looking for spaces that, and I'll give you another example of my own thing, right? We just finished the World Series and I'm a big sports fan, not as big as I used to be. But I was at a game and I was pounding on the table and I was flipping out and my team was losing and and I labeled it as being a passionate sports fan. And I remember one of my friends saying to me after a game, it was just the two of us, and he's like, I love you dearly. And when people say that, usually there's something coming. And my friends now know that if I say with love, there's usually something like a bomb coming that's like,
Well,
get your Kevlar real quick. But he had said, I know that you're a passionate fan and you love the team, whatever. He's like, but I feel like your response to that might not be, he's like, appropriate's not the right word, but it was like you were getting more upset than what it calls for.
me.
And one of the things that I tell people is I say, if it's not going to matter, and this is still a work in progress for me, I'm much better than I used to be. But I do use my own tools. I do take my own advice. If it's not going to matter in 5 months or 5 years, don't give it 5 minutes.
Ooh, I love that.
And that has grounded me in a lot of things because there's a lot of things in the moment that they bring up. And this feels like a really important touchstone. They bring up our stuff. And I've learned that if something brings up, because I don't want, and notice how I'm not saying it makes me angry, sad, whatever.
Mhm.
Because nothing can make me anything without my permission. And a lot of times we give that permission subconsciously. Like we let other people, other things in our energy. And my invitation to you is if something causes your anger to rise to the surface, invitation to explore that. Invitation, I used to get like wild about things, but I realized that I'm never going to get apple juice out of an orange. I'm going to get orange juice out of an orange because that's what's in an orange.
Mm.
The chances that I'm going to get coffee out of a coffee cup are high because that's what a coffee cup is for coffee. So if we are a space where we are feeling some kind of way, whether it is we're experiencing anger, rage, which is compounded anger, resentment, grief, sadness, guilt, grief, shame, whatever it might be. Invitation to slow your roll and consider what the wound is, where it's coming from, and even something that I was asked a long time ago when I was raging about something. The person that was witnessing me, that was there with me, said, "Who can you not get angry with? Who are you afraid to feel angry towards?" And I, in the moment, would not allow myself to even consider that question. Now, I didn't get pissy with them or anything. I just said, no one that I can think of. And they said, okay, well, just kind of keep in mind because I feel like there's someone that it's taboo for you to feel angry towards or anger with. And I thought, that's a really good question. And a couple hours later, I was doing, I don't even know what it was. But out of nowhere, I burst into tears and I like ugly cried. Like I was on my knees in the room that I was in the fetal position, sobbing, ugly crying. And like in a space where I couldn't move, or if, the house had been on fire, I was screwed. And type of thing. I ugly cried until I was done. Until I like, okay, what in the world was that? And I didn't have an immediate answer till a couple days later. And a lot of times, yeah, I didn't have the answer for a couple days later. But I realized that part of what I did, especially when it came to politics, and this is, my experience, but I realized that politics and sports were the two safe places where I could be quote unquote passionate. And I could put all my anger and my resentment toward a specific person who I now know the whole thing. I've unraveled and unwound the whole thing. Um, But I realized that I had the story in my head that I couldn't get angry with them. Like, if I got angry with that person, they would be disappointed, they would leave, I would be, like, shamed. All these things that would happen if I felt angry with or towards them. And this is not about calling that person up and saying, "Not at all." I needed to just feel all of that goo in order to be in a space of, "Huh, I am feeling angry toward this person." And I eventually, again, got the whole story in my head straight. Like, I was feeling angry because I felt abandoned and such and so forth, and story, story, story. And once I finally paired through all of that, I'm in a space now where, with this current cycle where I'm very much quieter. I still have things to say, but I'm not at all vomiting on people that haven't, I'm bleeding on people that haven't cut me. I'm not verbally vomiting on people. There's no like, there's a little bit of frustration every once in a while, but for the most part, the things that used to get me going, there's nothing to go. There's no fuel anymore. Because if
Mm.
we're in a space of rage or we're in a space of, typically we have fuel within us that's trying to, like, we're fueling the fire, so to speak. If you keep putting gasoline or throwing logs on a fire, the fire is going to keep growing. If you take away the oxygen because you process your anger and your resentment, you might be like, yeah, it's frustrating to be in this traffic where I'm going 62 and people are flying past me. Better they get a ticket than me. So you're no longer racing. You're no longer, raging at your partner. You're no longer flipping out about the socks that are on the floor because they're not LeBron James of, laundry. Um, and you get to a point where you're able to ask for what you need. Because what happens is we don't realize that resentment and frustration is the gap between what we expected and we wanted and what we talked about. And resentment is the unmet ask, the ask we didn't ask for. And I'll give you an example. I when I used to visit people, I would not say what I needed. I would never tell people what I wanted or what I needed. And I didn't feel like I could. Like, I would just kinda go along and, wherever we went, I was like, "Okay, cool, wherever we're going, I'm along for the ride." But then I realized in doing my own work that I did in fact have needs and that it was okay to have needs. Oh my gosh, she has needs.
Like, well,
Okay. But we all do, right? And especially if you learn, I highly recommend this. If you don't know your love language or your love languages, I highly recommend taking the 5 love languages test and learning your love language because
mm,
that is literally how you fill your battery.
yeah.
And if you're a lot of us, because we don't know or we're terrified of asking, a lot of us are doing the equivalent of running our car on empty
Mhm.
or, or running our cell phone on 10% energy. Nobody breathing that has a cell phone. I mean, there might be 1 or 2 people, outliers out there. Most of us have to have our cell phone most of the time at a minimum of like 25% battery. Unless we're home and we're right near a charger, most of us when we're out and about, we like to keep our cell phone at, 50% or more battery. But our brains, our bodies, our emotional and our mental bodies, our energetic bodies, most of and our physical body as well, we'll burn ourselves all the way out. We'll burn ourselves the equivalent of 5% battery or 1% battery and be like, I'm tired because our society tells us that, there's this contest of who can be more, whatever, who can be more depleted, who can be, more miserable, etc. And it's like, that's a really gross contest, in my opinion. Um, and again, we get in a space of the things that deplete us, getting into a space of like, there's no shame in needing support. And
Mhm.
one of the things that I've told people is one of the things I would love to see in my lifetime is every single person has a therapist, a coach, a counselor, a third party support system of some variety that they can, 1, vent to, 2, have someone hold space for them, and 3, get solutions, be solutions based. So being in the space of like, I'll listen to, like, if you're working with me, if I'm coaching you, if I'm if you're in my healing space, is I listen to what's going on, repeat it back to you so that we're both clear and on the same page, and then we do healing work around it. So, like, working to dissolve that, working for you to tell me the story and get into the minutia of the stickiness and the emotion holding the story in place. Like, if you have resentment, for example, and a lot of marriages, spouses have resentment toward each other because this one needed this thing and this one is terrified of asking for it. And I end up saying to people, so what if you asked for what you needed?
Mhm.
And a lot of people are terrified of it because they have an abandonment wound.
Yeah.
So there's this fear of, if I ask, because they, at some point they were left or abandoned, and their brain, their nervous system took that in as, I asked for something. And because I was too much, or it was too much to ask for, the person who I valued left, or the relationship changed. As opposed to saying, and it could, as opposed to saying, I have needs and I'm allowed to have needs. And I'll give you a really tiny example. I had a client that had just had a baby, and the baby was probably 6 months old. And she was like, I just really want to shower. And I said, I want to shower by myself. She said, I have a 2-year-old and I have a 6-month old. And I said, so tell your husband he gets to be dad while you go take a shower. And she was completely in the space of, oh my God, I can't ask for that.
Hmm.
Like, who am I to ask for that? Right. And so she ended up being in the space of asking for it, but she was terrible. Like, she was in tears telling me, I can't, he's going to leave. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And she went downstairs and I said, when you get off this call, go ask him. Hey, babe, I need to take a shower. And her homework, working with me, her homework was to go ask for the shower. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to go put the kids to bed. Sure. I'm going to go put the kids down to bed. Does the 6-month-old need a bottle? Like, what do you need me to do specifically? Because she was usually the one that did bedtime routine. And she got a 20-minute shower and he did bedtime routine, put the kids to bed. And she said, I realized how much resentment I had toward him because I had a story that he never does anything. But I also had this story. I also realized that I never asked.
Yeah. So stories we make up in our heads, right? Yeah.
And they create so much resentment as opposed to just saying, I need this. And like, I would be in a space where, like, I would go and visit my parents, and my highest one is I am a quality time person to the nth degree.
Hmm.
And every time that I am with friends or whatever, I don't mind, a couple people, like, a group situation, but I really love and luxuriate in one-on-one time, no matter if it's with friends, my parents, whatever. And a couple years ago, I was spending the holidays with my parents, and I realized that I was going to have one opportunity to spend time one-on-one with my mom. And so I, had said, hey, really would love to do this thing with you, just the two of us. And I was like, okay. And it really was this big of a deal. I was full of anxiety. I was freaking out, like, oh my God, what if she says no? And I had all the story in my head. I was overthinking the crap out of it. I was freaking out a full bit. So I got to where I was going, to where my parents were, and I said, hey, so tell me about the itinerary for the next 3 days. Walk through that. And I said, hey, it's really important to me that I have one-on-one time with you. And I really value our time, just the two of us together. Like, no offense, to my stepdad, but I really need time just with you. And to my surprise, he was like, you two need to go do this. Yes, I'm going to do this part of it. You ladies go have a great time, blah, 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 blah. And ever since, it's like such a beautiful time to just, like, I absolutely, that time with my mom is so critical to me now. And like, I've learned to ask.
Hmm.
And when I've gotten out of the headspace, the overthink, when I've gotten out of the space where she's going to say no, and a lot of times, right, we get so up in our thought, they're going to say no. And we're in the space of, this is what I want. And then we overthink it. And then we get into, they're going to say no. And then we get into shutting ourselves down. And then we get into, never mind. And then we get in the space of, and then it goes one step further and is, nobody ever shows up for me. Oh my God, blah, 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 victim, 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 victim. as opposed to slow your roll.
Yeah.
What do you need? Like,
Mm.
really, what do you need? What does support look like? If you're a person, like, ask for the hug. Like, ask for the hug. Ask for the, hey, I could really use one on one time. I could really use a Zoom call. I could really use whatever you need. And it might be like, hey, I would really love it if we could do this, or if you could, like, I love that thing. If you're thinking about ahead to Christmas, or if you're thinking ahead to my next birthday, an early Christmas present would be blah, blah, blah. And even jokingly throwing it out there a lot of times, people want to please other people.
Yeah.
And we forget that a lot of times. People love to please other people. If someone inadvertently tells me a thing, I'm usually, because I have a really crappy memory, I am notorious for like getting in my phone and like making a note. Sarah wants this. Susie wants this. This one would love that thing. Like, makes me super happy to be able to go do that, right? And like,
Yeah.
who doesn't
Yeah.
like to be in that space?
Yeah, we want to help other people. We're inherently afraid to ask, but it's one of the best things you could do is to we can't do things alone in life. And I'm a kind of another thing that I do with a health and wellness coach. So that's something that I've had to help
Yep.
my clients to do as well as ask for help because we pile everything on our own plates and we try to play superhero and we can't do it
Yes.
and it affects our health and our well-being. So we could do a whole podcast episode on asking for help, I'm sure, because
Yeah.
it's such a great and important discussion. But I wanted to kind of begin to wrap things up. I don't know where the hour went, Jilly, but it goes by so fast. I
Yeah.
wanted to first give you a couple minutes with the opportunity to share a little bit about kind of your work and where people can find you. And I know you have a podcast, so please share that as well.
Sure. So you can find me at jilliemaria.com, JILLIEMARIA.com. You can also find me, my podcast is I Love You Weird with Jillie Maria. So any place you get podcasts, you can find it. There's many pods on there, which are monologues that I try to keep under 10 minutes that I find super helpful. And also guest podcasts. Planning on doing more of that and doing more of that into 2025 as well. Um, and what I do specifically is as a trauma and emotion healer and coach is I help you dig into the things like we start talking about the everyday practical things. Some of what I talked about earlier, right, is like when we get frustrated with our spouse because they are, throwing socks on the floor or we're yelling at the barista or we're frustrated in traffic. Those are typically signs that we're not on cue, that something's out of whack. And so I help you come in to talk about the story, like what's bothering you. And then intuitively, I get a notion about where your energy is. Like, a lot of times I'll say, what's with the resentment? What's with the anger? What I'm feeling boiling up is this, this emotion. Talk to me about what that emotion is. And I hyphenate emotion into E hyphen motion because it breaks it down into energy in motion because that's all emotion is. Rather than making it, that's why rather than making it wrong or bad, which are judgments, I say love-based emotions and fear-based emotions. So breaking them into like that, we need both of them. And I always tell people, I tell my clients, fear-based emotions to include anger, resentment, and grief, guilt, and shame are just there to tell you that you're out of alignment. They really are. Grief is love inverted. Anger tells me something is out of alignment. I'm not aligned with something or someone. And sometimes even is I'm not aligned with myself. Like that belief, like if something is causing me to feel angry, um, I want to dig into why. Like, what about this? Is a statement that doesn't align for me, or is it pushing up against a long held belief that I have, or is it true? Like, I feel like it's true in my body, but then I feel like, gosh, I've been this particular political party, or I've been this particular religion, or I believe that thing all my life, and this person is challenging that, right? And I'll just give you a super tiny short example, with that is I met somebody a couple years ago who is a multimillionaire. The dude has a ton of money. And he's local to North Carolina. And he does so many things. Um, for charities, very giving guy, blah, 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 does things at the drop of a hat, and does it all under the radar. Like if you did not know him, drives a beat up pickup truck, wears jeans on the daily, like is the typical like country boy type person. Um, and he challenged like a lot of beliefs that I had. And so I use him as an example because of that. Um, about, people that have money, et cetera, et cetera. And I want, when I work with my clients, one of the things that we do is we work to shift beliefs. We work to shift language because they get to a space where they're no longer able to be, as an example, they're no longer able to be poked by their spouse. And one of my favorite things is when people get used to get in that, that comical, like, the cartoon thing where you're like getting like this, and you're in a tangle or whatever. And I'll say to them, okay, when your spouse is raw with you, how can I hear you saying whatever they're saying, repeat it back to them. How can I support you? Because they're in the space of like, wait, what? They're looking for a fight, and you're saying, I hear you saying that you're frustrated with me because I didn't take out the trash, or I hear you saying you're frustrated with me because of this. Is that correct? One, you just heard them loud and clear, and you affirm that you heard them. So how can I support you? Or if they had a bad day at work, I hear you saying you had a really bad day at work, and you really hate your boss. What steps can I do to help support you? It slows people all the way down. It pulls them out of victimhood.
Mm.
It shifts the energy and it shifts the conversation. Hey, if you need to be mad, that's cool. Beat a pillow, scream and yell. Get in the car, put it in park, and just rev the engine until you're like, do it. Get all that out. And then calm conversation. What can I do to support you?
Love it. Key being calm. Right. After
Yes. Yes.
yeah, I'm a big fan of the work that you're doing. I've done some of my own healing in that nature, and I think it's super important. Like you said, we all have, coaches or therapists or just somebody on our side that we can work with. Our cat, of course, the beginning of the discussion, knowing our cats can help our own well-being as well. Jillie, thank you so much for being here. I'll make sure to link your information and website and podcast into the show notes. Appreciate you not only for making the time here and enjoying this conversation, but also just the work that you're doing, helping to really make this world a better place. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Everybody watching, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Cat Dad Show. It was great having you here and hope to see you next time. Bye, everybody.